Bhaktaya Namo Namah. So we offer our namaskar, our life, as a flower offering at the feet of principle of Sri Guru in its many manifestations, and Gurave Gaura Chandraya, Sri Gaura Chandra Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Dev, Radhikaya Tadalaye, Sri Radha, and his different associates, Krishnaya, Krishna Bhaktaya, Sri Krishna, to Krishna Bhaktas, Tat Bhaktaya Namo Namah, and to all Bhaktas, and ultimately every living entity is a Bhakta in potential. And we want to see each other with the most generous eyes, which is to see us for all that we can be, which is a Bhakta, a lover of God. So ultimately, in this Mangal Charan, we offer our respects in a non-sectarian way, in a way that hopefully encompasses each one of us. So thank you so much to all of you for coming today. And we are gathering again in Tadatmya Sangha, in family, to share our hearts weekly, and hopefully more than weekly, but the weekly reminder of the daily exposure of our hearts and presence to each other in one way or another. So let's begin our meeting today. Apart from my official Mangala Charan, Bhakti Rasa, some brief prayer, spontaneous prayer to add another layer of blessings for today. Please take the lead.
May we find inspiration in coming together, opening our hearts and presence to whatever wants to manifest within us, between us, amongst us, to nourish ourselves, and in doing so, to nourish our Sangha, and to be grateful and joyful in this project of bhakti that we are experiencing together.
Thank you. By the way, it was not arranged, so I took Bhakti Rasa by surprise, just in case. So she did pretty well. Thank you. So, greetings to all of you from Sri Rangapatnam, where I'm here today. Before starting with the questions, maybe I can share a few words of what has been going on this last week over here. We met last Saturday. At that time, it was still in the area where near the banks of the Godavari. I remember I was in that room where Sriman Mahaprabhu spoke with Ramananda Roy, his famous Samvad or conversation. And from there, we traveled with Swami Maharaj and Vishwarup Prabhu, who are joining me, or I'm joining them. We are joining each other. We traveled to Tirupati to eventually go to Tirumala. Tirupati is a city, big city. We stayed at the ISKCON Tirupati temple. We share some glimpses from there, beautiful place. And then we went to Tirumala, which is a hill where we can have the darshan of Sri Venkateshwar, this very ancient deity and temple, which is, as I think I mentioned, the most visited religious site in the whole planet, basically, receiving 100,000 daily visitors on a normal day. Now, we are not counting festivals here, special days. Normal day, 100,000, 1/10 of a million. Sorry, I've been exposed to AC these days, so that's why I will be coughing a little bit. All of us are like this. So it was a beautiful experience. We went to the mountain that day. We arrived thinking, okay, we start the queue and in a few hours we'll have darshan, but the queue opened like 5 hours later. So we have 5 hours to be already, we were with the hope, we want to have a glimpse of Vaikuntha here, right? Venkateshwar is very much about Vaikuntha. And Vaikuntha means non-anxiety, without anxiety. So we arrived and was, okay, no anxiety. We want to access Vaikuntha. There cannot be anxiety. So now we have to wait 5 hours. We left all our stuff, phones, everything in the car because you are not allowed to enter with anything to that section. So we were just the three of us wandering in the outside of the gates of Vaikuntha, so to say. And then after those 5 hours was like another 3 hours in the queue, moving and going through different parts and waiting because again, too many people. But it was beautiful and gradually entering into the official temple, and really it was immediate experience of, okay, this is Vaikuntha. And it was beautiful. It reminded me Gopakumar in Bhagavatam. Though his affinity is for Krishna and Vrindavan, he went to Vaikuntha and he loved that. He appreciated that. He incorporated impressions from that place, which were added to his journey, though that was not his final destination, so to say. So I felt, not to compare, of course, myself with him, but in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, we have a particular window of opportunity, but that doesn't mean that Vaikuntha has to be distasteful or anything. So just entering to the temple, ancient temple, like 2000-year temple, incredible place. So many people. I mean, to see the faith and for many people in India, this is a one in a lifetime journey. No, I mean, in one sense, we could say we from the West, you have privilege because we come from farther than them, many of them. But for many of them, it's more difficult than for us to reach that place once in a lifetime. So you could see the pilgrimage and the longing and the intensity of the prayers multiplied by thousands. So that was really moving. So, and eventually we were able, I didn't know where, if it was my first time, so I didn't know at which point I will be having the darshan of Venkateshwar, because you will walk into different temples and sub-temples and one section and another. So I was kind of, okay, open to whenever that happens. And yeah, in a moment that I suspected this about to happen, although I was not entirely sure, from the distance, inside a room, inside another room, and inside another room, there was at the end of that Venkateshwar given darshan, which for us, we could have darshan like for, I don't know, 30 seconds. And it was already time for someone else to have darshan. So I also appreciated that, okay, because in material calculation, you can see a 10-hour waiting for 30-second darshan. It's not fair. But that's not the logic in Vaikuntha, right? I mean, there has to be some longing, some sacrifice, some waiting to have a glimpse, a quality glimpse of what's that about. So it was beautiful experience. Tirupati. Then we went to Bengaluru, which nowadays is called Bangalore, after English visited India, so to say. And there, I practically didn't leave the room. I was a little sick. Still, I am a little bit, but worse. So the devotees had to do some meetings there, but we stayed for 2-3 days at the at ISKCON Bangalore, which is a very huge compound, very impressive. They have, again, if we want to continue with numbers, they in this case distribute 4 million plates of prasadam daily. So they has this beautiful project called Akshaya Patra, coming from the expression from the Mahabharata, which is Akshaya Patra means like inexhaustible vessel or pot, right? Where prasadam keeps coming, so to say, it never exhausts. So yeah, beautiful service they are doing. Of course, interestingly, this group mostly aligns with the Ritvic philosophy, what we may call Ritvic philosophy, which of course is not my cup of tea, but also in my personal opinion, it's not necessarily that because of that there's nothing to appreciate and there's everything to criticize and that's it, right? It's not black and white. So they were very, very gentle with us, and it was a nice experience as well. And last night we traveled from there to here, where we are now, to Rangapatnam. Originally, we're planning to go to Sri Rangam, which is further south, but we had some confusion with going there, and we said, okay, we'll go to Sri Rangam, but we'll stay at Govindaji Gardens, where we are now. So when I was seeing the distance, I realized Govindaji Gardens and Sri Ranga are like 400-kilometer distance. So it's not so close. So we cannot stay there to go. So we realized that we cannot go to Sri Rangam this time. So we came here, which is a place called Rangapatnam, similar. And from here, I will be traveling to Udupi on Monday, which will be the last destiny in the south before returning to Vrindavan for the last 3 weeks of the journey in India. And here, as you have seen, for those who have seen, I've shared today a few videos from the place I'm in. It's called Narasimha Chaitanya Mat, which is a beautiful place, also known as Govindaji Gardens. I've saw the place by pictures, of course, but never been here before. So this is an ashram founded by Srila Bhakti Gaudiya Narasimha Maharaj. I don't know if you are familiar with him. He was initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And then he took shelter with Srila Siddhar Maharaj and then Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. So he has founded this ashram like 30 years ago. He passed away, Srila Narasimha Maharaj, some years ago. So now he's got brothers taking care of this. Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj, we were able to share with him today. It's a beautiful place at the banks of the Kaveri River, one of the 7 famous sacred rivers of India: Ganga, Jamuna, Saraswati, Godavari, Kaveri, and so on. We were bathing today in the Kaveri and sharing with the devotees. I will share some pictures these days as well from the place, but I share some darshan of the place and different altars. Gaur Radha Madhava, Gaur Gadadhar, huge Jagannath, Nrsimhadev, and a very, very, very nice place. And for us, we were talking with Swami Maharaj today, for us it's kind of being at home here as well, because though it's so to say, it's another mission, quote unquote, they are Prabhupada disciples who later connected with Srila Siddhar Maharaj. So that's basically our DNA. At least I'm speaking for me, and with Swami Maharaj, we're sharing this same background. Since day one, we connected with Krishna consciousness. We were, so to say, given in the ashram books of Prabhupada and books of Srila Siddhar Maharaj from day one. So I've personally been that blessed. So being here is like, yeah, meeting extended family, because you kind of talk a similar language, you are familiar with similar moods and conceptions, even if you don't know each other, even if it's the first time you're coming, there are enough common connections in the family tree, so to say. So it's a beautiful experience for sure. So that's where we are now. And I have extended myself considerably today, more than normal, but probably because I'm not seeing also any raised hands. So I'm also nervous about any other surprise party is coming today. It's not my birthday, not my solar, not my lunar birthday, not my Mars or Saturn birthday. So please stop, right? Okay. So, any questions, any comments, anything you may like to share, you can raise your digital hand or raise your physical hand or do something about it.
Mayapur Sangam has a question. She can't raise her hand. And then after her, Rasangi has a question in the chat because she has laryngitis.
Okay, today is not a digital hand day, it seems. There's strike, digital hand strike. Okay, no problem. Okay, please, Mayapur Sangam.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Oops. I have a question. It just appeared right now in the car when we brought back Lakshmi Priya. I'm reading the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, and I'm in the section where Brahma is creating the Kumaras. And I was really kind of surprised or shocked to read that Brahma got attracted sexually to his daughter. And I needed to read it twice to say, oh, really, this happened to Brahma? And then I was reading the explanation of Srila Prabhupada, which are really, how to say, strict. And I was wondering if you could give a more broad-minded explanation about that, why that happened to Brahma.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Of course, this is one of those sections in the Bhagavatam that we may need to go through a few times and understand it and explain it in ways that are not only satisfactory to our needs, but actually also, because it's not that the scripture had to satisfy my needs and has to adapt to what I need, but in a way also conveying the essence of Shastra in a way that we find some proper satisfaction and understanding and inspiration. So the section of Brahma being attracted by, there are different ways to say, by her daughter. Some commentators will make the point that the daughter of Brahma was Bak, which Bak means the speech, right? The organ of speech, the act of speech, Bak. And because there in many of these sections, there's highly symbolic content, I will say. So we have to be also careful of not being overtly literal in how we read every single section of scripture, because sometimes the literal meaning doesn't make full sense, and that's a hermeneutics principle even in our tradition. With the direct meaning of a statement doesn't make perfect sense, so to say, probably we need to resort to a secondary meaning or indirect meaning, which is not taking the text literally. Like example that sometimes it's given, an obvious one, for example, of course, I don't know, Krishna calls Arjuna in the Gita Purusha Vyagra. Purusha Vyagra means, "O tiger among men." Of course, if you take it literally, it means that Arjuna is a tiger, right? He has 4 legs, he roars, he looks like a Bengali tiger, and that's it. Now, of course, that's a literal meaning, but it doesn't make sense because we know Arjuna was not a tiger. So we need to resort to another way of reading that same section, and the same way with other sections. So in this case, the commentators make a similar point. So they explain this daughter actually represents Bak. Bak means the sense of speech, and Brahma wanting to have intercourse with her daughter basically speaks about if you want to put it that way, the lust of speech, or in other words, how difficult it is to control the tongue. Let's put it that way, because that's a very strong point in scripture. Like in Bhagavatam says, if you have controlled the tongue, you have controlled all your senses. If you have controlled all your senses, but not the tongue, you have not controlled all your senses. Now, so like some emphasis on that little thing inside your mouth that nobody sees, that is running the whole show, so to say. And controlling the tongue, of course, is a twofold enterprise. One is in connection to food, but actually the main emphasis throughout Shastra is speech. Again, Bak doesn't mean tongue in any direction. Bak means speech. Like Rupa Goswami begins Upadeshamrita saying Bacho Vegan. Bacho is Bak. The Vegan means impulse. So first word of the Upadeshamrita, interestingly, right? The nectar of instruction by Rupa Goswami, who is not a secondary person in our lineage, and we have this compilation, which is the nectar of all instruction given, but this most important first word, speech. What to do with speech? Begam, the impulse to talk. And Rupa Goswami said you have to learn to tame that beast, so to say. And that doesn't mean stop talking, right? That doesn't mean, sometimes we have to stop talking. We have to learn to listen. We have to know how to talk, to whom, in which way. It's not just let it go as it comes, right? So it's a very refined thing. So that's one main way to interpret this particular verse. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has mostly provided that angle of interpretation of this section, which goes again beyond the literal thing and having to do as even someone like Brahma. The spirit of this section says okay, Brahma is the highest being in the universe, the most sophisticated, aristocratic, cultured entity in the whole cosmos, in the ladder, in the hierarchy, and even he is succumbing, is it? Succumbing to not being able to control this organ of speech. So trying to make a point, not to make us hopeless, like, oh, if that happens to Brahma, what to speak of me then? It's not from that place. It's more like setting the tone of even great personalities can succumb to that. So we have to pay some special, be cautious about that, pay some attention, know that that will be something we need to work on. And of course, when we say Brahma, as we all know, Brahma is not referring to one unique person. Brahma is a post, right? So Brahma is a post. One can be Brahma. Maybe you were Brahma. I don't know. We never know. But you can be Brahma. So it's not so much about one specific personality, but it's a post. So it's not saying that every single Brahma is doing that and stuff like that, but it's saying, again, someone occupying that post, even with all that it requires. For example, Srimad Bhagavatam declares, for you to be born as Brahma, you need to execute Varna Ashram perfectly for 100 lifetimes without failing. And that's impossible, basically, almost. And that's why quickly the Bhagavatam says, whenever there's no qualified jiva for that post, Vishnu himself occupies the post, like making the point. Many times there's nobody that can be up to that mark, because that's not easy. Of course, we will say that when this happened, and I don't remember, I have to check the purport, but when this particular lila happened that you are referring to, Mayapur Sangam, is clarified. This Brahma is not Vishnu occupying the post of Brahma, because that doesn't happen to Vishnu. So it happened to a jiva occupying the post of Brahma. That again, Brahma is the highest being in the material universe, but still it doesn't mean that you are beyond it all, so to say. But I will say the main lesson here is, I am following just what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions, to grow awareness, create awareness of speech. And again, speech means sound, right? And sound is the most subtle thing. And the most subtle thing is the most influential thing. So not only we receive influence, but not only we become influenced by others, but we become influenced by how we choose, what we do, how we choose to speak, for example, which words we allow to leave our mouth, which sounds we choose to throw to the ether. That creates an effect, not only for us, for the environment. To say that the sound that one invokes, surrounds the planet Earth 7 times before continuing its journey somewhere else, implying it remains there, creating some particular effect. So it's an invitation to be mindful about our speech, and many times, again, we may not need to speak as much as we think, and we may need to learn to listen. For me, all this is entailing this particularly. All this not being said in your face. But if you play out the implications of what it means to have lust for speech, what it means, what are all the ramifications, one of those will be learn to listen, right? Learn to listen and learn when to be silent. Krishna himself in the Gita says, from all the secret things, I'm silence. So he's promoting Maunam. Of course, he's also promoting, do something with the organ of your speech. But many times it's wise to know where to stop speaking, when to just say, I don't know. Right? Especially for someone like Brahma, right? Which may not be easy to say, I don't know, because he knows so much. He has these 4 heads thinking in all 4 directions. So he can be talking and sharing wisdom forever. So it may be difficult to control the organ of speech when you have so much knowledge, so much prestige, so much position, so many people, how to say, waiting for you to say something. So we can play out all that in connection to Brahma in particular here, right? To be in a position of authority, of influence, of power, of knowledge, and people looking up to you, which is all of that is fine, and you may have lots of things to say, and you can use the organ of speech to bless, to share, to instruct, to enlighten. But also there has to come a moment where you have to resort to silence, or where you have to be, how to say, to be wise enough to say, I don't know. That's also a sign of wisdom when said in the proper moment, right? So, so all this can be tied to this particular section of the Bhagavatam. I don't know if that makes any sense, Maya Prasanga. What do you think?
Yes, that makes sense, but I'm just surprised why Srila Prabhupada is then sometimes so radically explaining things. I know the background, how he was raised, that he is treating the woman topic and sexual topic really strict. And sometimes I'm questioning myself, should I only read the Srimad Bhagavatam, only the shlokas and not the explanation? Because some explanations are, I don't know how to explain it, making more confusion than clarity, or I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. I understand, no problem. Not first time that I'm hearing something like that. And it's understandable what you feel and what you mentioned. And it's delicate because, of course, you don't want to, how to say, to dismiss Srila Prabhupada altogether, or to dismiss his purports, or to dismiss what he said in those purports, despite the fact that you may not feel, oh, that's fully relatable to me in where I am in my journey, and the language and certain expressions kind of do not talk to me. And probably an answer will be, well, Prabhupada in one sense was not talking to you at that time. He was talking to someone else 60 years ago. In one sense, my point is, language changes, expressions change in 60 years. I mean, just put a movie 60 years ago. It sounds like any movie actor speaks as Shakespeare or something. They're very cultured and very... and now you put a movie and hardly they use words. It's just like whatever. in general, of course, I'm generalizing here. No? So my point is, and I'm not saying one time is better, the other time is worse. I'm just saying in different times there are ways of communicating things that make sense or more sense for certain people in certain contexts, and you remove that. And of course, you have something that creates some sort of short-circuiting. And we should be, again, very careful of not thinking, oh, someone like Prabhupada or whomever, why they're saying that, and you get angry and you get confused and you just discard the whole thing not to be disturbed. I think the challenge there is to try to bring all that into context, to be sensitive enough and empathic enough to travel in time. Okay, to which audience he's talking, from which background he's coming, which was the language of the time, the language he grew up with. In many aspects, those are relative details, but at the same time, they craft a certain experience, which words you use, which analogies with examples, which visuals, which again may not relate to who we are and where we are now, but that doesn't mean we are just erasing all that. It's just those same things may need to not only understood in context, but re-expressed in proper language. Proper, by proper, I mean, I'm not saying that was improper. I'm just saying in a language that speaks to the times today. 60 years, so many things change so much, right? And I'm talking in general, again, at this precise moment, I'm not recalling the exact purpose of what Prabhupada say in those sections, but of course, I can imagine in which direction you are talking about. And at the same time, and this is something that I always mention and I will mention, Srila Prabhupada is not a person stuck in the past. right? So Srila Prabhupada is not limited to what he said in his books. So we have to be very careful. Even if he says something that we feel uncomfortable, we do not agree, or we do not relate, that doesn't mean that that's his final word. No? I mean, he's an ever-evolving personality. So we have to give him permission to grow. And he himself, many times in his lifetime, he will change his opinion. He will be like, how to say, some devotees will come and say, Prabhupada, this thing you say is not accurate because of this. And he will, change and adapt. So why that's not supposed to continue happening? Of course, he's not with us physically on planet Earth, but we should understand that that's the nature of an evolutionary, evolving person like he was, willing to change, willing to adapt. So we should represent that spirit in his service and in the service of the parampara. That's what parampara is about, right? So if something that some acharyas said half a century ago or 2 millennia ago, for whatever reason, is not fully resonating with today's language, that doesn't mean we have to discard it, minimize it, downplay it, but be, again, careful, sensitive enough to understand it in context and augment the truth in service to that personality. Because again, that's parampara. Parampara doesn't mean limit yourself to say what your previous acharyas said or less than that, but you are invited to say more. Because that's the nature of revelation. You can always say more. If you are not willing to say more, basically we are doing a disservice to the parampara, right? Because disciplic succession is to pass on a torch that is ever expanding. So if something, a gift, ever expanding gifts comes to you with that potential of ever expansiveness, and instead you just limit it to one single thing, you just bonsai it, so to say, and trim it and keep it in a way that doesn't grow and become maybe even smaller, that's not parampara, that's not sampradaya. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I will recommend that to try to understand. No, of course, also one doesn't need to force yourself. Okay, have to go through every single purport and have to be in ecstasy with something that somehow is affecting me. I wouldn't say that's natural either. But also we have to be careful not to just dismiss some of those sections, like from a place that may be affecting our faith, or maybe from a place that is not deep enough. So we have to take our time to connect, you know, with the context, with the feeling, with the background of the author, and with everything else that person say. That's how we have to address scripture, you know? Because if not, we engage in decontextualized study, so to say, and that can be very dangerous if we approach scripture or acharyas commenting on scripture without holding the bigger picture in mind and everything else they said in different situations, as much as we know, of course. That can be dangerous because we can just find one statement and we just zoom in that statement, and that becomes the all in all, and we lose sight of anything and everything else, and we just reduce the person to that one statement, and that's not kind. No. So that's a constant exercise we have to do, not only with acharyas or books or shastra, but with people and things being said or done in the past, in the present, in the future. And that's a tendency, you know, something is said or done that affects us, and we tend like just to take that sutra, those few words or line, and reduce everything and everyone to that, and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. And at one point, if you continue to zoom in, you go crazy. No, at one point you have to stop the zooming in and you need to start to zoom out. Zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, bigger picture, more context, more context, more context. And you see now the tree in the forest, so to say, no, the whole thing, no. So it's an exercise, no? It's tapasya. But that's how we can actually go through scripture and shastra and really capture the spirit of that, and not just get caught into something partial, so to say. So anyhow, I hope that helped. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and yeah, of course, for having the sincerity of expressing, okay, this section is not easy to understand, or even it's disturbing me, and so on. I think it's important that we have the honesty to acknowledge that, and from that foundation, continue to work together. Thank you. Okay. Again, I'm expanding my answers because I'm still not seeing any digital hand today. So we have the shyest day of the year, probably, or something like that. Any other questions, comments, something you may like to share, to add?
Rasangi's question is in the chat.
In the chat, I have
In
a
the
question.
chat?
I have
I'm not reading the chat,
laryngitis.
sorry.
I can't talk.
I'm not paying. Okay, I'm worse than you, but we are doing our best, no problem. So question, Rasangi, okay, thank you. Okay, from the interview with Jeffery Long, I was struck with his understanding of what God means to him today, and I was struck with his use of the word friend in addition to love, etc. Doesn't friend imply personhood? Could you talk a little about the differences between Advaita Vedanta and Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Okay, there are a few questions here. I'm going in different directions. Friendliness, personhood, Advaita Vedanta and Gaudiya Vaishnavism. If possible, next time I will prefer something goes in one single direction, and then we can go to another question in another direction, because it gets like a little bit like multi-branched, which I'm fine. I multi-branch myself a lot when I answer questions. But if the question is multi-branched, my answer may get multi-branched. So if you can keep up with that, let's go there. Let's become monkeys and jump from one branch to another. So the interview with Jeffery Long, as I always say, all of you have those interviews way more fresh than me, because I recorded that while I was in Sweden, which means like, well, July or something. So it was almost like half a year ago, and I haven't watched it again. So you have the whole thing more fresh than me in my mind. Of course, I remember sections of it, but I remember, of course, it was a beautiful talk, and Jeffrey is a dear friend of mine, though I never met him in person yet, but somehow we have developed a very close connection, and he has been very kind to me. Also like mentoring me in different aspects in terms of the scholarly academic world and writing and publishing books. And of course, he's now, I mentioned, I think in our conversation, he has been kind enough to agree to write the preface to my third book. So anyhow, it has been a very nice, smooth ride with him. And of course, he is part of the RamaKrishna mission, which technically speaking is aligned with Advaita Vedanta. So, but at the same time, he is someone who is very favorable to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And he knows Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He actually, as we mentioned in the podcast also, if I'm not mistaken, the memories come now. He mentioned it was his first contact with Hinduism was through Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, right? So, and he continues to write articles, I don't know, for the Journal of Vaishnava Studies, published by Satiraj Prabhu. He endorsed my first book also very generously, and he has contacts with Gaudiya Vaishnava. So he's very friendly. And of course, regarding the question, the differences between Advaita Vedanta and Gaudiya Vaishnavism, for that we require like a 10-year seminary or something to enter into the details. But very briefly, and we have talked about that a few times, and it's important to clarify, because with Advaita Vedanta means, okay, non-dual Vedanta, which gives the idea that whatever is not Advaita Vedanta is dual or dualistic, which is not correct. Our tradition is non-dual as well. But our non-dualism is nuanced. And that's the whole point I tried to make in the chapter on non-dual thinking and radical personalism. So we have different types of non-dualism, but all mystical traditions are non-dual, right? Of course, nowadays, unfortunately, I will say unfortunately in the sense that it's very misleading and reductionistic. Many people, when they hear Vedanta, they only think of Advaita Vedanta, which is a valid form of Vedanta. I'm not canceling that, but which is not the only form of Vedanta. We have all these different Vaishnava Sampradayas, all of them, each of them have their own forms of Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, and so on. Sudha Advaita Vedanta, Achintya Veda Veda, anyhow. And all of them are Vedanta and all of them are non-dual, right? In their own ways. We don't have time now to go to the nuance of each one of those. So regarding Advaita Vedanta, the basic premise is that for them, the ultimate goal is what we call radical non-dualism. We have radical personalism, but also there's radical impersonalism or radical non-dualism, which is in Advaita Vedanta, ultimately the goal is Brahman, an experience where there is no experience, paradoxically whatsoever, of anything else apart from Brahman. Now, there are two possibilities here. Those who subscribe to this school and who say, actually, nothing exists apart from Brahman, everything else is Maya or illusion. Even the notion of Bhagavan, even the notion of you as an individual jiva, even the material world, everything is false except for Brahman. So that's like hardcore Advaita Vedanta. And that's the type of Advaita Vedanta our teachers have strongly opposed, because basically their implication is the Krishna you're worshiping is an illusion. The idea of worship ultimately has to be discarded. The idea of loving interaction is not eternally real because there's only Brahman. So it makes sense that our acharyas have had some strong words about that. Now, another strand of Advaita Vedanta will be those who acknowledge the possibility of Bhagavan, loving relationship, personalism in eternity, but their cup of tea is Brahman, right? So they say, okay, I go for Brahman. I have those samskars. I receive those impressions. I'm inclined in that direction. I'm choosing that. So, but I acknowledge Bhagavan, eternity, personalism there is just not my cup of tea. So that's the type of Advaita Vedanta Jeffery Long embraces. And that's why I chose to have a conversation with him in this connection. Because, of course, it's not that I wouldn't choose to talk with anyone else, but it will be a little bit more complex because from the get-go, I'm talking with someone who considers all the most important things in my life as an illusion. So that's basically it in general, in terms of the sadhya or the ultimate goal to attain. And of course, in terms of sadhana, Advaita Vedanta emphasizes gyan above bhakti, although bhakti is there, but for Advaita Vedanta in general, bhakti is a temporary means that the closer you get to the realization of Brahman, the more bhakti is discarded, because bhakti ultimately for us needs an object and a subject, because it's a reciprocal loving interaction. But in Advaita Vedanta, there's no interaction because there's nobody else to interact with, right? Because there's only Brahman. No, there's no experience whatsoever of you as an individual being. So for them, bhakti is just a means that may prove useful in the pursuit of the goal of gyan, which is mukti, in their own words, mukti, moksha, in connection, sayujya-mukti more specifically, which again it's not our cup of tea, but it's a valid option. It's in Shastra. Now, sometimes devotees get too much militant against that, but that's in the scriptures. That's validated by Shastra. That's considered mukti. So mukti means mukti, liberation. Because sometimes they also say, okay, yeah, that's there, but if you go there, eventually you will fall. No, that's not correct. How you will fall, if this is considered mukti, how can you fall from mukti? If you can fall from mukti, technically speaking, it cannot be called mukti. No, any destination that is fallible cannot be defined as mukti or liberation. Hitanyataru swarupena bhyavyasthitihi. Bhagavatam describes mukti as a permanent situation. So it's a permanent situation in transcendence. It exists forever in eternity. So how bad can be something that has a place in eternity? Of course, we have some of our acharyas using some strong words about that type of realization, but that's just coming from their own bhava, subjective, ecstatic experience of bhakti, and they make the inner comparison between that and other things, and they express those things as said, but we shouldn't imitate that. No. Prabhupada Saraswati, for example, in his Chaitanya Chandramrita, he not only insults mukti, kaivalyam narakayate, calling that like hell, he even insults, quote unquote, insults, again, ecstatically, puts down, let's put it that way, other Vishnu avatars, right? He says like, oh yeah, some say that Varaha lived the earth and that this other avatar did this thing. Okay, they can do all that, but what's all that in comparison to what Mahaprabhu came to give? And he starts to glorify Mahaprabhu. No. So you have to understand from which place he's saying that, because if you just copy, paste, and parrot the same sentence, you probably commit aparadh. If it's not coming as an ecstatic expression of bhav, the partiality that comes from bhav towards your istadev, if it comes just from a place of fanatical immaturity, that won't bear the same fruit, right? Anyhow, some thoughts between Advaita Vedanta and Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So much can be said. We can continue later, but you say something else. So doesn't friend imply personhood? Second question, and my reply to that is yes. That's it. That was easy. Again, I don't recall in detail how we talked about friendship on that podcast, so sorry to miss that. But yeah, I mean, friendship is such an important relationship. We need so much time to delve into that, but that's one for many philosophers throughout history. Friendship even was considered that the most noble of all relationships, even like the most beautiful, the more like one-to-one, heart-to-heart, like something that is not imposed by how to say, by your genealogical tree, right? Like, because you are born and you already have a mother and a father and sister, you cannot, in one sense, choose that. But friends, that's something that is like completely like voluntary. You are not born, in one sense, with friends. In one sense, I hope you get my point, right? Like you develop friendship with people and you choose to invest yourself in that relationship and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's lots to say about friendship and the connection with personhood and with being personalist and the need of friendship and how friendship in one sense and as once this realization came as a gift that actually even all the different relationships have converge in a type of friendship. Even if you talk about, okay, you are with your husband, but the couple relationship ideally in its ideal maturation has to become a type of friendship, husband and wife, father and child. Ideally, at one point, the relationship becomes a type of friendship. So even if you talk about other rasas, so to say, Madhurya or Vatsalya, all of them include a type of friendship. Even servanthood, dasya, the master and the servant. But if the relationship is deep and intimate, there is a type of friendship there. Still, the posts remain: master, servant, father, child, husband, wife. but a type of friendship emerges in each one of these relationships. So that speaks about the all-pervading nature and necessity for friendship, to discover a type of friendship in every relationship. What to speak when there's, so to say, pure friendship, which is not my husband, it's not my child, it's not, again, it's not someone that I know that I have to be kind of. It's just someone that I choose to be a friend, and I choose to give myself in friendship to that person. That's very, very noble and glorious, right? And we all need that, to receive and to give friendship. Yeah. Guru disciple, another example, of course. Vishrambena Guru Seva, Rupa Goswami will say, the spirit to serve the Guru is Vishramba, which is a type of intimate trust and confidence, which is includes a type of friendship also. Again, a type of friendship is not just like casually treat my Guru, hey Gurudev, how are you doing, Paul? No, it's not like that, but there has to, in time, again, it's not that it may be in day one, but the relationship has to evolve into a type of friendship. Everything, every relationship. Yeah. Okay, let's move to the next.
Wait.
Now I see two raised hands, so we'll go to Yamuna. Sorry, Prasang, you had something to say. Excuse
I
me.
just wanted to say that your question to him was, what does God mean to you today? Which was brilliant. That was a brilliant question.
Ah,
God means to you today. And
ah,
he spoke about it, which was really,
ah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
is that I have been so indoctrinated to hate other people or to be afraid of them who are in this impersonal state, that they're dangerous. And it's like crazy. And I'm happy to get rid of that, get rid of that kind of sectarian mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's okay. And there is a place to be afraid of people, not that I'm promoting that, but in certain stage of development, some boundaries and some fences and fear, it's just the only main motivator we know, or one of those, and eventually we outgrow that, and we can realize, oh, this guy is nice. I don't need to be afraid of Jeffery Long. He's a nice person. And yeah, what does God mean to you? I remember that idea came to ask that question, and I think that was the first time I asked the question. But from that moment to the following guests that I had, maybe not to all of them, but to most, I continue asking them that same question, because of course the answer will be always different, not from guest to guest, but even from day to day to the same guest. So yeah, thank you. Yamuna, your turn. Sorry.
Hi, Krishna. It was just continuing on with the merge, that I've either heard it in Bhagavatam class or I've read it in Prabhupada's books, that you touched on it, and I fully understand what you were saying in that regard and honor that. So I was just wondering where the concept comes from, that it's a temporary, because you get bored there. If you merge, you get bored and you've got to come down. So where does that come from? I can't remember if it was, I read it in Prabhupada's books or Bhagavatam class, but it was one or the other. That you just get bored and you come down because there's no relationship there. That was the thing, is that there's no relationship.
Yeah, the board. I mean, again, going back to my answer to Maya Prasangam and some things that Prabhupada have said, you have to understand also the audience and the context in which he was saying some of the things. He said at some point, sometimes, that you can fall from Brahman, but also I have statements. I don't have the exact quotes with me at hand now, but I have them compiled, when he clearly says that if you reach that Brahma sayujya, that's liberation. There is no fall from there. So I will say that that's my interpretation, but how those falling from Brahman that he will refer to is more about those who want to go to Brahman, but have not attained that, because there are those who basically offend bhakti and consider Bhagavan as illusory, and because of that type of mentality, the offense to bhakti, the offense to Bhagavan, prevents them from reaching the ultimate goal. But to those jnanis who pursue mukti, moksha, sayujya-mukti, acknowledging that Bhagavan is real, but going for their own cup of tea, in that case, that's possible. And there are statements that Prabhupada make it clear. So I think, again, we have to develop a way of thinking about the things that we can accommodate all this. To say that you get bored and you fall, for me, is kind of a little simplistic way of, I mean, you cannot just prove a Siddhantic point saying that. I know that Prabhupada may have said that sometimes to someone, and that was enough for the audience at that time. Oh, okay, I got bored, that's it. And it's okay. I mean, I'm not condemning that at all. But also you can make the same point with the so-called idea of falling from Golok Vrindavan. Someone who could say, oh, you got bored there and you fell, or you got distracted, or you got ended. But that's, again, a very simplistic argument. How can you get bored there? No, there's no, what's boredom? No, and so on and so forth, right? So again, Brahman, we say you get bored in Brahman, but we have no idea what's that. I mean, we have no idea what's that. It's beyond words, technically speaking. So it's beyond ideas. So from this side of the equation, the side of the river, we are trying to think what must that be, and the experience of Brahman. But the experience of Brahman is beyond the gunas. It's near Gun Brahma. So if we are not beyond the gunas ourselves, probably our ideas about what's beyond the gunas are pretty guna-like. So we will think, oh, you get bored and this, and you make your own comparisons, and they're not the next loving Krishna in Golok, so they will fall. And sometimes the subtle implication in some of those who think like that, not all, is like, until and unless they reach to my heaven, everyone will get bored and fall constantly, because my heaven is the higher thing. So it's an, and again, I'm not saying that Prabhupada had that mentality, but some of us may have that mentality, that we can only conceive of people attaining fulfillment in our particular team, so to say, in our particular tribe in eternity. Everything else is inferior. You get bored, you may fall, this may happen, this doesn't happen. We may feel that need to downplay other options, not because we have very strong faith, but probably because we have very weak faith, and we need to downplay everyone else, because if not, we feel threatened by others, right? So we have to eliminate competition, and that's our way of showing our superiority, which is, I mean, even the need to feel, to express superiority, that's weird, right? So yeah, I mean, if you attain Brahma Sayujya, again, it's mukti. Mukti means eternal state, and it's in eternity, and there is an experience of bliss, although it's difficult to put into words. But I mean, there is people, I mean, if you study the lives of some of these jnanis, they practice a lot in their jnana. I mean, I'm not promoting that, so to say, but I'm just saying, for someone to strive that hard to attain that goal, I mean, it means there's something there. There's something there, and they have some experience of that makes them continue that path. Again, it may not be our cup of tea, but we have to be very careful not to insult Brahman. I mean, Brahman is one of the three aspects of the absolute. You cannot insult Brahman. I just finished my study. I mean, you can never finish, but I try every year to read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. So I finished it the other day. And just in the last section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, last chapter, there are so many verses where the realization of Brahman is emphasized. I mean, you have many verses in the Bhagavatam emphasizing Brahma Sayujya. Our Acharya have explained it in ways in different ways, but it's there. Which again, it's not saying that that's the goal of the Bhagavatam, but the Bhagavatam is, it begins saying, Brahmeti paramadmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate, Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam jagyan natvaya. No, the seers of the truth, the wise people, they acknowledge that reality is non-dual consciousness, and it's known as Brahman, Paramatman, Bhagavan. That's the beginning of the Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam is acknowledging Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, and in parts the Brahman, the Bhagavatam, is sharing examples of people who are inclined toward Brahman and people who attain that, and they praise that at times. It's not that the Bhagavatam is only talking about Rasa Lila, right? Of course, from a Gaudiya lens and certain particular bhava and perspective, ecstatic devotee will see, okay, Sri Radha is behind every syllable of the Bhagavatam. That's our particularly subjective glasses, but you have Advaita Vedantins giving Bhagavat Saptaha, talking about them for 7 days from their Advaita Vedanta perspective, and there's a place for that. And you have Vaishnava from other Sampradayas explain the Bhagavatam from their Vaikuntha perspective, and there's a place for that. In fact, if you pay attention, every time the Bhagavatam speaks about God, almost every time the Bhagavatam speaks about God, except for the 10th canto, it always speaks about Narayana, 4 arms. Almost everywhere. Every time God appears, gives darshan, the devotee sees God, the description is always 4 arms and all that. I'm not saying with this that we Gaudiya Vaishnavas are twisting things and then wrong. I'm just saying scripture is a desired tree and it lends itself for different perspectives according to your approach. There's not one valid way of approaching it. So I think this is healthy for us to remain open and broad-minded and not just think the Bhagavatam is only about what we say. Yeah, that's the most charming explanation we have found, and that's why we are here subscribed to this school. But someone else will come and say, for me, the Bhagavatam is showing how Narayan is the source of everything. And for others, the Bhagavatam is pointing to Brahman. And they will have their arguments. Probably they may defeat many Gaudiyas in argument if they start the debate. There's no need to defeat each other, I will say. There is a need to acknowledge the multiplicity of possibilities, basically, right? So yeah, there's no fall from Brahma Sayujya. There's no fall from, and it's not bad. It's not a problem. Remember, those who enter there, they choose to go there. They want to go there. They attain that, so they're okay with that. So we don't need to to lament for them, because by extension it's a similar principle. Oh, those Christians are going to who knows where instead of going to Golok. I'm so sad for them. Hopefully they fall from there, so finally they can reach the real thing, stuff like that. So we can extend that principle to everyone who is not our own group, and that's the beginning of a totalitarian regime. That's dangerous, right? So we have to accommodate so much, so much diversity in Golok Vrindavan. What to speak so much diversity in terms of Vaikuntha, Brahman. I mean, you go to Golok Vrindavan, it's not that everyone has the same opinion on things. It's not that everyone thinks the same way. As always, I give the example. Yashoda wants Krishna to have a sound sleep at night, and that's the last thing that the gopis want. Radha and Lalita and the gopis, they're waiting for Krishna to not have sleep at all and to meet with them in the daily rendezvous at night. So there's a clashing of intentions, so to say, a clashing of opinions, but there's no clash, quote unquote clash. Radha and Yashoda love each other like nothing. So many verses depicting their mutual love. So yeah, that shows us how we have to, whenever we find differences like these ones we're talking, we have to, it's an invitation to increase our harmony, our capacity to harmonize, to grow and to accommodate differences. And that begins here now in our daily relationships. Many times we are not very expert at that. Many times we just have an ideological difference, and that's enough to be a deal breaker in the relationship. And that's so superficial. That's so basic. Like some difference that we can't reconcile, on a philosophical level even, or some conceptual ideological level, or who knows what, some difference. And instead of feeling, okay, this invites me to increase my capacity for harmony and integration and accommodation of differences so we can love each other despite differences. Oh, no. Okay, relationship is over, or we have to take a distance, or I feel disturbed, who knows what. So we have to be willing to accommodate and to increase. Srila Maharaj will say that beautifully. I'm using so many words, and he will say it so beautifully, more succinctly. He will say, opposition increases harmony. No? Like when you find opposition in life, opposition meaning difference of opinion, something that you feel opposed, an opposition, that invites you to increase harmony. Harmony, accommodation of what you perceive as opposition, and integrate that in a different way, which now is part of the bigger picture. No, I always quote this famous example going from Srila Maharaj to Miles Davis, if you allow me, from Gaudiya Vaishnavism to the jazz world. So Miles Davis, once he was the drummer who was playing with him, he will mention this story. He was playing with him, and at one point Miles Davis is playing jazz. So in jazz there's so much space for improvisation, but improvisation doesn't mean you can just play anything and everything. There are some rules, some boundaries, but you can improvise in the context of those. But still there are some notes that are not supposed to happen in certain parts, right? But Miles Davis at one point played, quote unquote, the wrong note, a note that was not supposed to be played. And this drummer tells that when he was playing drums, and at one point he hears that Miles Davis hits the wrong note, opposition, follow the analogy. Instead of like, oops, wrong note, let's discard that as soon as possible and go back to the legal scale. He took that wrong note and started to emphasize the wrong note and play it again and create a whole new different avenue of melodic avenue on the foundation of that quote unquote mistake. And he created another layer of harmony. Again, he accommodated the mistake, the opposition, the wrongness. No? So, and this drummer that tells the story, of course, he went beyond music, and he said, that's a big life lesson for me, because that taught me basically this. Now, what we perceive as opposition, wrong, this shouldn't be happening, is actually inviting me to accommodate it in a greater harmony. So my point with all this is all this needs to take place here and now, how we deal in our most immediate relationships, if we want to enter into an eternal space where there's so much to harmonize and accommodate. And that's what love does. That's what Prem does. Prabhupada Goswami will say, Ahiri Bhagati Premnatra Bhavakuti Lavave. Prem moves in a zigzag way like a snake. And Srila Siddhar Maharaj will explain that statement, which can be explained in many ways. He'll say, this zigzag movement means that as the love is advancing, it's encompassing and embracing and harmonizing everything in its way. Nothing is left behind. Nothing is dejected, rejected. Nothing is seen as wrong. Everything is embraced, accepted, integrated into a higher synthesis. Everything's accommodated. That's the nature of love. No? So we have to gradually train that muscle and develop that capacity, right? I need to accommodate that as well. Anyhow, I don't know if that helps, Jamuna.
I do have another question, if that's okay, and if not, then I can ask it next week.
No, that's okay. We have like 15 more minutes. After that, I may have to conclude, but yeah.
Okay, so kind of a follow-on on accommodating and understanding where people are and honoring people's religious, spiritual paths. So I was taught, so it's one of those again, that, you know, somebody may be following Christianity or Muslim or whatever, but you teach them to add the maha-mantra, and then their practice becomes more perfect. But what if that's just not their cup of tea? They're happy in how they're practicing their spiritual life. They have their connection with God through their path. Why do we emphasize so much that no, you have to have our prayer? Our prayer is the prayer that will make your relationship with God more fulfilling. I have a little bit of a bee in my bonnet.
You already gave the answer on the whole dramatic performance in the context of that. So the answer to this is, when someone comes to me and tells me, oh, you're a whatever, someone from other tradition, let's say, oh, you're a Gaudiya Vaishnava, you just need to add the Lord's Prayer, and only then will be more perfect. That will be high. And then the very fact that someone tells me that will inspire me not to do that, because that's the effect that will create. I mean, if you are trying to impose your own stuff without taking the time of appreciating where I'm at in my own stuff, and just want me to subscribe to your own things, it's like, that doesn't speak well about your own tradition or how you're embracing your own tradition. Not the tradition, but how you're representing your tradition to me by saying what you are telling to me. That's not inspiring me to join. Sorry, right? So, hey, it comes from a necessity. It's come from insecurity. So I'm saying that so we can also, I will say, treat that compassionately. Like, I need all of you to be doing what I'm doing. That's insecurity. I'm not sure enough of what I'm doing. Basically, that's what the person is saying indirectly. No, the person may not even be aware of that. But I need all of you to be chanting my prayer, add my prayer to your prayers. That means I'm not convinced enough about what I'm doing, so I need all of you to be doing that. So maybe I may get convinced after that. So behind all that, it's insecurity, although externally it may sound like very bold and powerful, empowered preacher wanting everyone to be chanting the maha-mantra. Maybe there's just a fragile, insecure person with weak faith that cannot accommodate diversity, that cannot appreciate what's different, that feel threatened by the unknown, and that needs everything to be, how to say, in the context of certainty. Everyone has to be doing something that I'm familiar with. So I'm not feel threatened with unknown. I'm not feel threatened with what's unfamiliar. Please do what I'm doing so I don't feel that threatened. So I was saying all that not to condemn that people, but just actually, because we may be that people on some level, but to be compassionate, to understand there's fear, there is insecurity, there is terror to what lies beyond the comfort zone and the familiar. But one doesn't have in those stages the capacity to see all that. One that doesn't even have the words to conceive all the things, what lies beyond the familiar. For some people, that not even exist. So we should also understand that compassionately, not just put them in a box and condemn them or anything. No, so, and sometimes even that externally can disguise in the form of compassion, right? Like, I want all of you to be chanting the maha-mantra because that will be in your best interest and the greatest mercy possible. But actually, many times it's not universal compassion. All that is just, again, fear. I need the whole world doing something so they convince me about what I'm doing that I'm not very much convinced about yet. So I lack faith. I lack personal experience. So I need the whole planet to compensate for that by subscribing to my dogma or whatever. No? So yeah, those things happen in the kindergarten stages. Those things should not happen in more advanced stages, and one should anartha-nibriti, one should be awakened to those realities and to detect them and to have language to speak about the things and to understand from which place is coming. So yeah,
but Maharaj,
I'm saying all that so we don't stigmatize people who engage in that. We understand that, but sorry, yeah, you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say, I heard that it was Srila Prabhupada who said that he said, they don't have to change their religion, just they should add chanting the maha-mantra, teach them to chant Hare Krishna.
He said that at times, but at some times he didn't say anything of that as well. No, I mean, sometimes he was just okay with that. I mean, I wouldn't put Srila Prabhupada for sure in any of the categories I've just described, so to say, as a fanatical that could not coexist with someone of difference of opinion. Again, you have to put Srila Prabhupada in context. No, he was a very empowered person, and he had this like empowered vision. I mean, if you're empowered by Nityananda Prabhu, it's hard to say what you are seeing at that moment, right? So, so you're having this idea of, okay, the whole planet will be doing this, and it's coming from a genuine place of empowerment. So, but how much we can just copy paste that and try to do that in a way that has to be, again, pleasing to Prabhupada and pleasing to the parampara. Mm-hmm. Prabhupada say, my mission is the mission of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say, if you go to someone else's temple, you have to appreciate their worship and be nourished by that. No, you don't have to try to change them or anything, right? So that's what I will say. That's how it works for me, right? So I think it's common sense. I think it's common sense. Mm-hmm. And of course, again, Prabhupada is tasting the results of the maha-mantra and the sweetness and the beauty of it, and he wants to extend that experience to everyone out of compassion, not out of the lack of faith, not out of the different models I've just described, not out of feeling threatened, insecure, what's on the other side of the unknown, I don't know, let's convert all of them from that place. No, he's not. Whatever he says is coming from a genuine place of universal compassion and empowerment. So again, that's a separate category. That's a very unique category. Mm-hmm. And it's valid and it's perfect and it's beautiful. But it can be tricky sometimes because, okay, someone like Prabhupada say something, wish something, wanted something, but he was in a certain category. So how from our place we can fulfill that or serve, honor that in a way that is realistic and that we are not imitating and that we are do not end up being fanatical or who knows what, but remain compassionate in all our actions like Prabhupada did. Even when Prabhupada spoke very strongly sometimes, at the same time, he remained very compassionate and he showed that many times as well. So who has that capacity? That's not a joke. So yeah, he wanted everyone to taste the sweetness of the maha-mantra, but also how we process that in terms of trying to convert or convince, and if that's not happening, still they are missing something. I think that's a little bit too much. Again, I'm not saying don't try to share the maha-mantra with others, as long as the sharing comes from a loving, compassionate place, an overflowing of your own experience with the maha-mantra. But if you don't have much of an experience of the maha-mantra and you are not doing enough to have that experience, but at the same time you're expecting everyone else from other traditions to be charmed with the maha-mantra, that makes no sense, right? I want you to be charmed by this mantra, but how charming you are. No, what are we doing to fall in love more and more with that? So we have to always keep very much coherence in some thoughts. And always to say, okay, even Prabhupada saying some of the things in the context of what to say, what he will be saying now. Will he be saying exactly the same thing? So many of these stems from me come from this place of Srila Prabhupada say, with all respect, which I'm not saying to deny that, but I'm just saying subtly we are forcing him to that. we are not allowing Prabhupada to say something else. No, and that's not fair. That's not realistic. That's not allowing the Acharya to be eternally dynamic. So we have to be in tune with the spirit of the Parampara, so we are able to discern what the Acharya will say now. In some cases, he will say the same things. In some other cases, he will continue to say new things. So, and we are supposed to say those things, of course. Parampara, not because we are Prabhupada, but we can have the boldness to take certain steps, responsibility, our own voice, and honor his gift and that of the Sampradaya and the Parampara. Yeah, that's real humility, right? Humility actually has to do with committing ourselves to the truth. That's humility. Perfectly submit to the truth. That's humility, whatever form that takes. And whatever form the opposite takes, that's not humility. And that's the main line of the Bhagavatam, Satyam Param Dimahi. That's how the Bhagavatam starts, Satyam Param Dimahi. Meditate of the supreme truth. Now absorb yourself in truth, in its highest form. But its highest form includes all forms. So yeah, we have to remain committed to that. Okay, I'm saying that Yugal Kishore is raising hands, but we are almost on time, Yugal Kishore. What to do? Can that wait till next Saturday? Or is like an urgent question that puts in danger tonight's sleep for you?
You don't
I
have
cannot
to,
listen to you.
You don't have to answer it necessarily, but it is somewhat, I think, urgent in the sense that, we're asking so many questions about differences, and how to treat people when there are differences. So yeah, I think balancing that necessity for listening, being able to control the tongue. Of course, I'm talking about myself. But then also sometimes there's a need to maybe challenge a statement that's said. And when that can be authentic, when that can be done from a place of compassion, because there's still a lot of misunderstanding around Siddhanta. And of course, there's also various, maybe legitimate interpretations. Not all interpretations have to agree. So I guess that's where my heart is. It's like, trying to treat people with respect while also being able to speak one's own truth. You're saying, you're talking about meditating upon the supreme truth. Also being able to speak one's own truth, I think maybe somehow fits in with this.
Yeah, I agree. Our own truth is not divorced from the supreme truth. It's part of it. It has to, because we don't exist as alienated, isolated units. So, but that doesn't mean that there's only the supreme truth and there's not our truth at the same time, right? Because sometimes we can overemphasize supreme truth, absolute truth. There's no your truth. No, there is our truth, our life, our needs, but though they do not exist in a vacuum, right? They exist in certain contexts, in certain environments. So yeah, of course there is place for healthy challenging of situations, and I will say it's healthy whenever it's inspired by a commitment to the truth. No, if the challenge comes from a genuine place of wanting to go deeper into something, to wanting to understand something better, to wanting to what to say. Yeah, if some statement is being said that threatens the flow of truth, that cancels proper speech or who knows what, there's a place for challenging that. Because truth is ever evolving, truth is dynamic. So whatever opposes that, of course, challenging has to be done truthful way also, and that means respectful, empathic, compassionate. Not challenging just doesn't mean throwing a bomb at the other person and good luck, but it has to be done in a truthful spirit, no? So I will say that no matter which stage we are, if we are in a situation that we feel the need to go deeper into the truth, there's a place for challenge. Again, challenge doesn't mean how to say, a violent, arrogant type of defiance of what someone is saying, but just bringing some question or bringing some idea that invites for a paradigm shift, that invites for a deeper understanding of something. And of course it's always tricky, because something is, we may need to present a challenge, and some other people may not need to present a challenge, and that in itself presents a challenge to them. Like why you're asking that question, why you are insisting on that, why you want to go deeper than that. For some people it's like, I'm fine here, well, why you? But then comes, and that's part of human complexity and relationship, when we need to take time to understand each other and empathize each other, understand what someone needs may not be the needs for someone else, but each one in our own journey needs to, not so much to challenge other people, but to challenge ourselves to begin with, right? In a healthy way also, because you can also over-challenge yourself, and that can be exhausting and frustrating and too much. So, but a healthy dose of challenge keeps things new, keeps things surprising, keep things dynamic, keep things in growth and transformation, right? So, and challenges will come even if you don't bring them to the table, no problem. They will knock on your door very often. So we have to be willing to open the door, right? Atiti Devo Bhavan. An uninvited guest is to be treated as God himself. So that's another way of putting it. Okay, short answer, sorry, but here we have to almost conclude. So I will close here myself. Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Gaur Bhaktananda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanand.